Welcome to the third annual Parsons College Wall of Honor dedication. My name is Dave Neff, class of 1969, and what you've been listening to is an original vinyl record that we transferred to DVD for the Parsons College Chorale and the fight song, and later on we're going to ask you to stand and rise toward the end of the ceremony, because you'll all remember on the back are the words to the alma mater. We have a young man in the audience today that I'd like to give recognition to in his class, because we were able, at the time, Barhide Chapel and Parsons Hall were being raised to keep this piece. Rich Talon, class of 1966, is that correct? Rich, if I can stand for a moment. These are pieces that we've resurrected, and as you see in the Alumni Hall, as well as what you'll see this afternoon at the Carnegie Museum on the third floor of the Carnegie Library, these are pieces of memorabilia. Each year, people come through and they say, "Can I give you something else? My husband, my wife is gone, the kids don't want it, what can I do?" And so we receive these and keep these pieces for memory. Today, we are honored to have such a great turnout for the event and to recognize members of the student body who have gone on in their chosen fields and profession and have made a mark not only on Fairfield, but the state of Iowa, our country, and also on the world. 2 years ago, on this weekend, we inducted the inaugural class and honored the following individuals. Wes Bartlett, class of 38, Kiwanis International President. Lee Gobble, class of 37, Haberdasher Emeritus. Lee is still with us. He's 96 years old, was invited, and hopefully he will join us at some point today. Ryan McClin, class of 69, Senator, Mayor of Dayton, Ohio. Obie Nelson, class of 46, legendary coach. Alan Paul, class of 67, State Senator. Ed Rogowski, class of 65, President of St. Ambrose University. Dr. Robert Scott III, class of 63, Research Physician. Marshall Wallace, class of 64, stage and television star. And Verl Whittington, class of 52, Shell Oil executive. Our second class was inducted just a year ago this weekend. Roger Bachman, 67, Special Forces, U.S. Army. Dean Gabbard, 46, editor, publisher, Fairfield Ledger. Robert Gamreth, who is with us today. Bob, if you'd like to stand, please. He's over in this area. Good to have you with us, General Gamreth. Major General, Army National Guard, Insurance Executive. Dr. William Biff Coomer, class of 68, Professor. General Richard Lawson, 41, 4-star General, U.S. Air Force. Roger Nielsen, 56, educator and coach. Willard Pedrick, 36, Law School Dean. Larry Spencer, 62, Lieutenant Commander, U.S. Navy. Susan Fulton Welty, class of 23, writer, author, professor. Lewis Wilson, class of 64, athlete and youth leader. This year we have our third outstanding class to share with you today. Each year, our spring e-newsletter, we open a nomination period and invite alumni to present names of Parsons students to be considered for the next October Wall of Honor induction ceremony. Our committee consists of Dr. Robert Tree, who's behind me. Dr. Robert Tree, John Graywood, who is co-chair, John Blackstock, co-chair, and myself. We review and consider these names and come to a final consensus. The nominations are announced in the summer e-newsletter. The vision for this ceremony was shared with us by John Blackstock, class of 64. John is also editor of the Parsons e-News. He announced the idea at the formal dedication of the Alumni Hall in September of 2008. The recommendation to form a Parsons College Foundation was made by John Braidwood, class of 68, at an all-class reunion the summer of 2003. Since the announcement of the foundation, John has worked tirelessly to raise funds to assist in the construction of the building where we are today, the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center. Total dollars raised from alumni, faculty, and staff during this period of time exceeds $200,000 to make this facility possible. You'll find the names of many of the contributors in the brickyard outside the main atrium entrance. And you can find an insert in your bulletin if this is something you'd like to do to continue these ceremonies. Nancy Wortinen brought the recommendation to form the Parsons College Alumni Association to reunion, and there's currently over 2,300 names of alumni in a database. This serves as the heart of the information sharing. Nancy is assisted by Doug Marion, Ken Rice in managing this information and development of the Parsons College Alumni website. Dr. Robert Tree has provided a sounding board for the evolution of the entire process. We will forever be indebted to these individuals who have given so generously of their time and talent, because without this energy, enthusiasm, and passion, these events, these communication opportunities would not be possible. Please join me as I ask each of these individuals to stand and recognize them with a warm round of applause. We would like to recognize those faculty and staff and trustees who are in attendance at this time. Would you please rise and remain standing and hold your applause until everyone has been recognized. As I mentioned before, Lee Gobble, I did not see him into the building yet, so hopefully he'll make the luncheon. Ray Ham is the assistant women's basketball coach and admission staff. Mr. Ham, myself, I taught physical education. One of our honorees today, Bob Spencer, who's the women's basketball head coach. So Bob, if you'd like to stand, please. Dr. Tree, history and dean of the college, and Vera Price Young, physical education. So thank you, faculty, staff, for being here today. Our earliest graduates, in fact, she was just here a minute ago, was Vera Price Young, class of 46. Lee Gobble, class of 37, and we have two most recent graduates, the last graduating class, 1973. Pat Arnspeck and Ray Ham are with us today, so we have a full spectrum in front of you. We'd also like to recognize the staff and administration of the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center for their assistance in preparation for this event. It would not be an official activity in our community if we didn't invite our Mayor, Ed Malloy, and we've asked him to share a few moments with you at this time. Ed Malloy, our Mayor.
Good morning, everyone. Dave, thank you for the opportunity to come and welcome you all back to Fairfield, our home and a home that you shared, and we all understand the importance of the time that you spent here and how much of an important part of your life it was, where your education was completed, where strong relationships were forged that continue to this day. And it is really a great, distinct honor to have your honorees with us today, for this facility to be the home of the Wall of Honor for Parsons graduates, ensuring that the legacy and the memory and the history and the importance of what Parsons meant to our community's history is preserved forever. I'd like to just say thanks for coming to a typical October weekend in Fairfield where the temperature is in the mid-80s, mid-60s at night with some balmy breezes. Last night, if you were fortunate enough to be here, you experienced one of our monthly art festivals, for the First Friday's Art Walk with an Oktoberfest theme. It was a wonderful night out there. In this facility today, we have the annual quilting fair, which is, I'm sure you will get a chance to walk through there. Incredible work by our local quilters. This evening on this stage, I believe it's the third annual Superstar competition. This is our own version of America's Got Talent or American Idol, where singers and performers regionally compete up to this point, and they will give their final performances tonight for a $1,000 prize. This afternoon at 1:30, we are going to be, it's a very, very special day for us. There are two projects that we will be celebrating and inaugurating that have been many years in the works. One of them, the Fairfield Loop Trail, which is a 16-mile walking and biking trail around the perimeter of Fairfield, connecting all of our best parks, the county park, going through native wetlands, prairie, connecting neighborhoods. It's really a tremendous achievement of about 14 years from its visual conception to building it all out. There's about $6 to $7 million invested, so we will be celebrating and opening that today. And where we will actually conduct that ceremony will be at a place where we are celebrating our history again. And that is the place where there are barns that were owned by the Mazdan family, who raised champion Percheron horses in the 1850s, 1860s time. And these barns have been restored. We also have converted one of our old homes into a welcome center. So this area will become very strategic for us as a trailhead for this 16-mile loop trail, and also a welcome center to our whole community. I know I'm probably forgetting a few other things, but again, we are very, very fortunate to have celebrating both what you're doing here this weekend and all of these other activities. I hope you have the time to enjoy some of those while you're here. I also want to say that Dave Neff, who is my good friend and have been introduced to John Braidwood and John Blackstock over the last 7 or 8 years, and of course Dr. Tree, who is a very venerable citizen of our community, do a wonderful, wonderful job of continuing the presence of Parsons here in Fairfield. It's very, very important to us, and I know you appreciate it, but I would like you to extend a thank you and a congratulations to everything that they do on behalf of Parsons College. With that, again, I would just like to say congratulations to the inductees and the honorees, and enjoy your time in Fairfield. Thank you.
Now the moment you've been waiting for, anticipation. This is the 3rd annual induction of the Parsons College Wall of Honor. Our procedure will be, we will call the presenter to the podium, and after brief remarks, our honoree will be called to the stage to be presented with their own personal Wall of Honor plaque by Dr. Robert Tree. We'll then go to the middle of the stage for a photograph that John Blackstock will take, and then the honoree will remain in the chairs, and we will fill all 10 chairs with those honorees or their designee. So that will be our procedure, and we'll move forward from there. Our first inductee, Doug Billings, class of '63, Holiday Inn Executive. Dr. Michael Gilpin, please come to the podium as the presenter.
Good morning. First of all, congratulations to this entire class of inductees. It's like a who's who in America. The qualifications to be nominated and to be an inductee are basically twofold. One, a very successful career, and 2, a love of Parsons College. And I'm pleased to have introduced and to have nominated Doug Billings, who certainly fills both of those criteria. Doug graduated from Red Oak, Iowa in 1959. He had an outstanding high school career in many plays, physical activities, athletics. He was class president, and he was awarded the American Legion Award from Red Oak. He visited Parsons that spring, and there he met Dr. Roberts, and they had a good relationship throughout his time here at Parsons, which was 4 years to get his degree in political science and history. And then also, Doug did many things while he was at Parsons. For one thing, he was vice president and president of SIGEPS, but probably more importantly, for a period of almost 2 years, he was president of the Unifraternity IFC Council. And during his tenure, as Parsons was expanding, 3 new fraternities were introduced to the Parsons campus and a couple of sororities. He came to Parsons on a Presbyterian scholarship where he majored in political science and history. At Parsons, he also had an outstanding career otherwise and was recognized. He was in Monk's Head, Greens Key, several other things. After graduation, he worked for Parsons for several years with the extended universities, extended colleges. And then he ended up back in Red Oak, working for a clothing business, a retail clothing business. And he was there for a few years, and in Red Oak, it was the smallest town in America to have a Holiday Inn, and the inn was failing.
and his business associate recommended him to take over management of the inn. Well, 7 years later, he was given stock options and so forth, and had a controlling interest in it, and his standards of excellence and hospitality led that inn to thrive. And so he sort of got involved in more things. Things snowballed. In 1986, he was president of the Hotel and Hospitality Development Company that he started. In 84, he was, if I can read this right, Hospitality Executive of Holiday Inn International Corporation, and things just went on from there. Now, they told me I had 3 minutes, and they knew, I guess, that I'm a college professor who would ramble on and on. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell you that things just snowballed from here. And he's had an amazing, successful career. Now, he's been involved in recent years with the SIGEP reunions. And in 2008, he hosted the reunion. And part of that was we were invited to his house for, crackers and snacks and such like that. And in his living room, the entire living room table was filled with memorabilia from Parsons College. There was the program for when we graduated. We both graduated in '63. There was the O.B. Nelson book. There were many, many, many other things. I mean, here's a man who loves Parsons College. You cut his finger, it'll paint Kelly green. Now, he and his wife, Annette, have also been very active as just citizens. They're very active in their church, the Episcopalian church, in their community. She's president of the women's group. They both serve as ulcers, and he's on the vestry board. They have 2 daughters, and they're very involved with their church with charities. So there you have it. As brief as I can put it for a career this outstanding. There are more details in this program. But you have a model citizen who loves Parsons, who's had an outstanding career, and it was very easy to nominate Doug Billings for this honor.
Good morning. A wave of nostalgia kind of washed over me as I was listening to some of the comments, and I appreciate Dave and the foundation for what they have done and for the preservation of Parsons College. Those of us that were here and lived during that particular period of time when the college was thriving, and in 1959, when I first appeared on campus, there were 900 students. And when I came back to preceptor in political science and history, the institution was approaching about 5,000 students. So you can see how it grew. And Mike Gilpin, as you all may recall, was president of the student body his senior year. And in that capacity, one of his responsibilities during college convocations was to robe and gown and walk representing all of the students. And Dr. Tree was the, we call it chancellor or whatever of the university, and he would process with the mace, and he would lead all of the professors in, and he would get to the podium, and he would put the college mace down, and he would turn to Dr. Roberts and say, "Mr. President, the college is assembled." And I kind of feel that way this morning. Dr. Tree, the college is assembled. So I have so many memories and so many positive things that Parsons has affected my life that I could write a book about. It has been a significant experience for me. We have a university in Myrtle Beach, Conway, South Carolina, called Coastal Carolina University. It somewhat mirrors a little bit of what happened at Parsons. It grew from 1995 when our daughter, all the rest of our family has gone to the University of Iowa, but our daughter Abigail said, "I'm not going back there where it's cold, I'm going to go south." And so we took the obligatory tour of the colleges, and we went to Elon, and we went to the College of Charleston, and we ended up at Coastal Carolina University. To make a long story short, Coastal Carolina University has grown from 3,000 students in 1995 to almost 10,000 students today. And we have adopted Coastal Carolina as our new university. We are great friends with President Dr. David Senzo and his wife Terry, and are doing things there that we would be doing here at Parsons if Parsons was still alive and active today. But let me guarantee you that Parsons College, as long as you and I keep it in our hearts and minds, will always be here and will always be alive. And so I appreciate very much what all of you folks here in Fairfield and throughout the country continue to do to make Parsons College a living memory and something that's real in the hearts of all the people that it was touched by. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, many days we are thankful when we get up in the morning and the sun comes up, and today I would like to say that Gobble is in the house. He just arrived. Dr. John Gladfeldy, 1948, ophthalmologist. Would Robert Gladfeldy please come to the podium as presenter? And as he's coming forward, I'd like to make a special note that John Gladfeldy's wife, Bonnie, is deceased, but she is being honored this weekend at the museum, where you can go this afternoon. Her lifelong interest in collecting paper dolls is being celebrated with an exhibit at the Carnegie Historical Museum. Examples of her Tilly the Twirler collection are on display. Also, a dress that she was inspired by Claudette Colbert, paper doll, sewing machine, which has been given to her by Johnny Carson's mother, is also in the exhibit. You can enjoy these artifacts when you visit the Parsons display this afternoon. Robert.
Thank you all. It's actually an honor to be here. We've had a number of the family members over time that have attended Parsons besides Dad. My mother went to Parsons. That's actually where Dad met her. Some of his cousins went. His mom, my grandmother, Susan Gladfeldy, actually graduated with a 2-year teaching certificate from Parsons at the same time that Dad graduated. So it's rather interesting, a mother-son graduation at Parsons. Dad was born here in out near Batavia, Libertyville area. Grew up on a farm. When we used to visit the farm as little kids, it was rather interesting since Dad was in the public health service then, so we kind of lived in Staten Island, New York, or Norfolk, Virginia, or places like that. But we always visited the farm, and it was a very different experience, meeting and knowing people from Iowa. It's where we learned that there was things such as cash money. People who had small farms, it was very important to actually have cash money. And then Grandma had her egg money. So it's a very down-to-earth type society. Anyway, Dad attended several of the one-room schoolhouses out in Batavia. Actually, on the farm is one of the one-room schoolhouses that he attended. He's, along with George Davis, has had the place restored. Anybody ever interested in going out there, let us know. When he made it to Parsons, he basically was the overalls, the bib overall, type kid, had one pair of shoes. He was very fortunate the university took an interest in him. They gave him positions for setting up labs and cleaning the rooms and whatever that basically covered his tuition. The school managed to loan him books. So he was able to attend Parsons. That was probably the only reason. He also managed to graduate from Parsons in 3 years, which was quite an accomplishment. He decided to head off to medical school. He applied at the University of Louisville, was rejected because he was too young. He went up to the University of Iowa for a year, and then the following year they accepted him. He graduated from University of Louisville, #1 in his class, went off into the public health service for 8 years, left there, moved to Central Florida, opened up an ophthalmology practice, ended up with having 6 kids, which kept him and Mom quite busy. He, in Florida, he served in many of the medical capacities with the Florida Medical Association and the American Medical Association. He was appointed by then Governor Lon Childs of Florida to the, probably one of the top things you can do as a doctor. It was the Florida Board of Medicine. Most states have such organizations. And they're the group that licenses and protects the public from bad doctors. People who come in and want to apply for, to be licensed to practice medicine in Florida. And they'd review the record, and you dig deep enough and you find out some of them actually had been removed from practice in other states, and the answer is you probably don't want them in Florida. So, he did that for a host of years. Dad retired in 2004, even though retiring and my father, just two words that aren't synonymous. He kind of maintained some of the practice because he volunteers at 2 different places doing ophthalmology work for free, help out different organizations. And as I said, we're very honored that he's received this award. My brother actually went to Parsons for a few years, some of the cousins. My sister actually was actually going to head here, but it got caught up in the time period when Parsons closed. So again, I just want to thank everybody in the board, for accepting my father as a nominee for the Wall of Honor. Thank you.
I didn't wear a necktie. When I was in high school, I still could never tie a bow tie. So I used to go out to somebody's house before a party, and he would tie my bow tie for me. I hear he just came into the audience, and I wish to thank him. Again, if you never see my balance, please call me. If it hadn't been for Parsons, number one, when I was in high school, they had a cleanup day. My brother had loaned me a movie camera, and I was taking pictures, and I have a picture of a gorgeous blonde walking up at cleanup day. I didn't know who she was. It took me a long time to find out. When I started college, when I was 14, I took summer school classes so I could get through high school in 3 years. And one of the classes I was the only male. There were lots of females. One day I found a note in my book, wanting to know if I would take somebody to the co-ed theater for her birthday on July 14th. There was no name. I had no idea who it was. I was 14. So I left a note. I'd love to, but I don't have the money. Remember, I was a farm boy. Well, note came back, don't worry about it, I'll take care of her. I still didn't know who she was. Then the note came back, meet me in front of the co-ed at such and such a time on July 14th. I almost did not go. Now, at 14, I had other interests, but I went, and this beautiful blonde her dad happened to run the theaters. So I got free popcorn, I got free admission. Now here's a 14-year-old sitting next to a beautiful blonde, so I ate the popcorn and watched the movie. So, in short, if it hadn't been for Parsons, I never would have met my wife. Also, one of the instructors there taught me how to do photography. If it had not been for Parsons, I never would have been a photographer, which I used to put myself through high school, college, and medical school doing commercially. If it hadn't been for Parsons, I never would have been able to go to college. I had no money. Red Miller, I signed up and was accepted in one of the advanced chemistry classes, and he realized that I had no money to pay my tuition. So he arranged for me to set up the labs in chemistry, and that paid my tuition, and they loaned me the books. Second year, he made arrangements with the Von Oldens, and I did the same thing for botany and biology. So I had my tuition paid for all 3 years. So I was able to work my way through college. So if it hadn't been for Parsons, I would not only not be here today, obviously, but I never would have been able to finish college. I've never been a doctor, and you all would not have to stand here and listen to me. So I am very grateful to Parsons. The other thing that's always sort of annoyed me, when somebody introduces this thing, they always say family and friends. Now that has annoyed me because I always considered my family as friends. And I have a large number of friends in the audience today, and I wish to thank them for coming. Thank you very much.
Our next inductee is George Long, class of 58, Athletics, National Athletic Director of the Year. Would Lee Kane please come to the podium as presenter?
As Dave said, my name is Lee Kane. I'm a local boy. I graduated from Fairfield High School in 1951. We just had a 60-year class reunion, and I'm a 55 graduate of Parsons. I couldn't be happier today for coming to do this because I nominated 2 of the recipients, Bob Spencer and George Long both, and they both got picked on the first ballot, so whatever that means. A quick note, Bob and I started in the fall of 1951, and with the Korean War in 53, we lost all but 3 of our pledge class, so he went off to war, came back, and finished and graduated. So Bob, congratulations on this. But I'm here to present George Long. He came to Parsons in the fall of 1954, and as president of student council, we would try to greet all the incoming freshmen. And my first impression of George was that he was really shy and he was quiet. He later joined the fraternity, and the same impression I got. I never dreamed that he would accomplish all the things that he has. So why and how did he succeed? A lot of hard work, perseverance, along with what his father taught and instilled in him. His dad, for 66 years, ran a summer baseball program for college players in Muscatine, where George grew up. This involved a lot of planning, implementing, and completing the program each year. He'd find the players a place to live, maybe get some small jobs around town. He got advertising, he got donations, and he got citizens in the community involved. And I'm going to list a few of George's accomplishments here in a minute, and when I do, I think you'll see where this comes through to him. So George, as Dave said, he was National Athletic Director of the Year. He was Urbandale Citizens of the Year in 1982. He was Central AD in 1982. And the biggest thing that he did was get booster clubs. He informed booster clubs. He travels all around the country. He still does this. I worked in his office for 7 years after I so-called retired. And I remember one day getting a call from this broken voice, and he was from Aruba, which is a little island off the coast of South America. Anyway, George went down, and he helped him, and he's helped them all over not only the state of Iowa, but the country. National Convention Chair for Boosters Club. He's a member of state football, so he's done a lot of things locally, but the 2 or 3 most important things I think that are really significant. He was a starter on the 1954 Muscatine basketball team, and I can remember him coming to Parsons as a freshman, and they had a big, slow center, and so they played control ball. Of course, with O.B. Nelson, you ran. I mean, you were up and down the court. George used to get frustrated at that, but I think by the time he was a senior, he mastered the game. So he's a member of the Iowa High School Hall of Fame. They call it the Hall of Pride. If you ever get to Des Moines, go look at it, because he's not only in there as a member of the team, but as an individual. But this summer, he's 75 and over. The 3-on-3 basketball team went to the national convention down in Houston, and they won the national championship. So George still plays, but George, I can still beat you free throw shoot around. The most significant thing, and then I'll close here, he raised at Urbandale High School, he was there, over $2.5 million worth of improvements. And I know because I worked in the activities office for him for 7 years, and I saw a lot of this from the inside out. So George, congratulations on being a recipient of the Wall of Fame. And to sum up your career, I think I would use 2 words. You were creative and you were a visionary. So I present to you Mr. George Long.
Thank you very much. I have many, many fond memories of Parsons College. I remember being a freshman, we had Mrs. B who dearly wanted the television set. Back then, $400 would be like $4,000 or more. And she had several fundraisers, and I said, "How are you doing on your television?" And she said, "Oh, we all excited." She said, "I think we got $40 or $50 now." I kind of laughed. And she said, "What are you laughing about?" And I said, "Well, I hope to be graduated in 4 years. Why would I want to get involved?" And of course, I was setting her up. And Dick Wagner and I and Fred Bankus and some of the others, we had planned on having a wrestling. As you know, my dad was a sports promoter, and some of it rubbed off me. And so we had a professional wrestling, and I'm glad the Armory didn't check on capacity. Our goal was to raise $400, and we ended up raising $1,500, and the place was just packed. Everyone was involved, and so that was my first go at doing a fundraiser. And we got the television set, and it worked out very good. One other story I can remember, when I was coaching at Green Republic, and we needed a speaker, so we had O.B. Nelson come to be our speaker. And while he was there, I thought I'd have a chance to visit with him. But he spent all this time talking to my wife. And finally, I don't think I got 2 words in all the time O.B. was there. And when he got up to speak, all he did was talk about my wife. And one of the things he said, which is probably true, he says, if there was anybody that over-married, George Long was certainly over-married. And December, we'll be spending our 52nd anniversary, so that was of all the things that happened, and I was fortunate to receive some wonderful awards, but the biggest thing was helping schools raise literally, not only in Iowa, becoming a mecca of booster clubs for the United States, but working 16 years as National Convention Chairman and raising literally millions of dollars, writing articles and things of that nature. And this, I feel, was great for our young people, and I'm still active with National Booster Clubs of America, and I got my start right here at Parsons College. And I just want to thank everyone that, because like Lee said, I was pretty shy. I'm not that shy anymore, but I appreciate everything that I learned at Parsons, and very much.
Charles Reed, class of 1942, meteorologist. Would Linda Reed Leach please come to the podium for a presentation?
When my father was born sometime around 1917, he joined a dirt poor family of tenant farmers. He was puny, so he got out of most of the farm chores. But he had a fantastic brain that his mother recognized, and she spent the rest of her life doing her best to nurture it and keeping it going. My dad somehow managed to work himself up to an athletic stature. He got a track and field scholarship to Parsons. He also worked at Loudon's, like most of you people did. And Dr. Neff found out that he was a wildcat.
Correct.
Thank you. He also pitched for the Merchants team and the CCCs. And I guess he was a rather handsome young man. He had a lot of lady friends, including eventually my mother, whose father had come down from Minnesota with his construction company to build your high school after the old one burned down. His mother, through a lot of sacrifice on her part, made sure he stayed in books, made sure he kept his studies up. Parsons gave him the academic start he really needed. And from there, he joined the Army Air Corps, later the Air Force, which he stayed in until he retired. But his passion was always science and mathematics. His first achievement, if you want to call it that, was the naming of hurricanes after ladies. His mother never got to learn that. She might have been offended, I don't know. My mother was rather ticked off because he used her maiden name. So nobody knew it was her up on the board. This was all in preparation for VJ Day. After that, it was mostly physics. And he went on to permanent assignment in Washington, D.C., where he became an executive officer of the Air Force Office of Scientific Research. A little disillusionment because of the Washington politics, which we won't get into. And then he retired from the National Academy of Sciences as its director of physical science. Always the passion was science, and he had intended to come back to Fairfield after he retired and teach at Parsons, at least on a consulting basis. To that end, he bought his sister's farm down in Keosauqua. In the meantime, Parsons took a rather drastic change, so that never happened. I want to especially thank Dr. Neff for helping me, especially after my computer died, and he had to write me a letter. And I want to thank the committee because, in effect, you have brought my father home. A special thanks to my Uncle John. There's a very special man in the audience who's my father's brother, John Reed, lives in Libertyville. I love him dearly. And if possible, could he come up for the picture?
Sure. That'd be fine.
Thank you.
While John's going back to his seat, I'd like to share just a moment of my memory of John, the brother of our inductee. I had the honor of being intramural director in 1969 when I graduated, and John was on the maintenance staff working with Jack Carlson. And anytime I needed a project completed, the field house or a ball diamond, this guy would take care of it. So John, thank you very much for being part of Parsons history also. Dr. Ida Nagashima Schneck, class of 46, pediatrician. Dorothy Jody Bell, please come to the podium as the presenter.
I hope when I finish my presentation, you will understand why I thought Ida Nakashima's neck should be placed on the Parsons Wall of Honor. She graduated from Parsons with the class of 1946. Ida and her husband, Dr. Stuart Snegg, live in Greenwood Village, Colorado. I nominated her in recognition of her bravery and dignity in the face of personal adversity, for her lifetime of professional achievement, and most of all, for her love of Parsons College and all that was good and honorable about Parsons. In 1944, I moved onto the second floor of Ballard Hall for my freshman year. Ida Nakashima lived in the room across the hall. I was so impressed with Ida. She was attractive, highly intelligent, and had a beautiful singing voice. Prior to World War II, Ida, her parents, and two brothers lived on the West Coast. Then all citizens of Japanese ancestry were ordered by the government to move into internment camps, and all connections to home, school, community, and friends were broken. The first camp they were in was 15 miles from home. Then the family was moved to Amagic, Colorado. Thanks to the American Friends Society and the Nisei Relocation Society, Ida had a chance to relocate in the interior of the country at Parsons College, where she could complete her education. She says that the years of Parsons were the happiest years of her life. She says she felt accepted as herself, and she made lifelong friends and met professors and advisors who guided her toward her ambition to be a physician. After Parsons, she entered the Women's Medical College in Pennsylvania. During her senior year, 3 months from graduation, she came down with tuberculosis in spite of the school's best effort to protect their students from this disease. Because she was an impoverished student working her way through medical school, Ida was treated for free at the National Jewish Hospital. After undergoing antibiotic therapy and chest surgery, she was able to return to medical school to complete her senior year and graduate in 1953. Ida interned in pediatrics at Colorado General Hospital. And while there, she met her husband, who was a resident in internal medicine. Ida and Stuart were faculty members of the University of Colorado Medical School for their entire careers. Ida worked in clinics and later started a clinic for teenage pregnant girls. Another pediatrician and Ida started a clinic for children of teenage mothers. Both needed special attention. She received an award from the local chapter of the Adolescent Medicine Society. For 20 years, she served on the admissions committee of the medical school, interviewing applicants. When Ida first retired, she taught at the University of Colorado Medical School on a volunteer basis for 3 years. Since her retirement, she has done volunteer work, including Reading for the Blind and Dyslexic, now called Learning Ally, reading medical material and related textbooks. In her private life, she and her husband have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Their daughter is a medical writer and their son is a psychiatrist. Ida and her husband, Stuart, enjoy traveling. Building on their enjoyment of hiking in the mountains, they jointly wrote a book called Hiking for Old Geezers for the over 55 set. More recently, they have compiled a yet-to-be-published book about the small museums on the eastern mountain slopes of Colorado. Ida's entire adult life has been one of accomplishment and giving back. To this day, she remembers the kindnesses and help she received from others, from the American Friends Society, from the Jewish Hospital, and certainly from her professors and friends at Parsons College. She considers her own professional and volunteer efforts to be a form of paying it forward. I think you will agree that Ida embodies Parsons College's legacy very well. Thank you.
I know when people say they're getting older, they get forgetful, so Dick Reese, please forgive me. I'm out of order, and we're going to move to Dick Reese, Class of 64, International Appraiser. Would Joan Reese please come to the podium as presenter?
Good morning, honorees and guests. I'm here to proudly introduce Honoree Richard Reese, a 1964 graduate of Parsons College. On that graduation day, Richard was excited and anxious to begin the rest of his life, little imagining the twists and turns along the way. He looked at himself as a humble, regular guy from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. But indeed, he has had an impact around the world. Richard's majors were English and history, and I asked him why he chose those two subjects. He explained that in high school, he took a test that indicates aptitude, and that test indicated he had an aptitude for teaching and ministering. Well, he took it literally and said, well, I don't think I want to be a minister, but maybe I could be a teacher. So he went to Parsons and got his teaching credentials. During his years at college, he was determination and caring for his brothers. As he graduated, he did not follow a career in teaching, but instead began his career at Parsons as Director of Student Activities. Although Richard did spend several years actually teaching in a classroom at American Institute of Business, and still once in a while teaches a class at USC, teaching and ministering really were always a part of his life, natural inclinations. Now, 20 years later, some of his students still keep in touch with him, saying, "You literally changed my life." We were foster parents to 3 teenagers who are, by the way, still part of our active family, one of them in attendance today. Richard showed love and patience as he mentored these wonderful kids, teaching them lessons about commitment and caring. They have said, "You changed my life." On that day in 1964, he could hardly imagine that he, a young man from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, would one day teach in Russia and China to help them develop a skill in valuation and appraising. As soon as he became aware that the Russians needed somebody to teach them, Richard volunteered. He paid for his own plane ticket. There was no compensation, but he saw a need and he said, "I can help them." And he did. He went to Russia and he taught them. He's known today as the father of appraising. And he hears yet today from Russian people and Chinese people, he did the same thing in China, "You've changed my life." For 25 years, Richard has had an appraisal and valuation company. He has both taught appraisal classes and mentored people at his office while they learned to do appraising and get their appraisal credentials. They too recognized Richard and said, "You have changed my life." Richard has a special talent for pulling a community together and motivating people to become active participants in their community. He is president of our 18 Community Homeowners Association, and is determined to continue to make it an award-winning community. Through his caring, enthusiasm, and encouragement, he has changed the way an entire community thinks of itself. What better legacy could anyone leave than a cadre of people who have declared, "You've changed my life"? What better service to humanity than somebody who cares deeply enough to change lives one by one? I too am grateful to Richard, who changed my life 39 years ago to become my husband. Thank you.
I deeply appreciate the friends, family, fraternity brothers, and all of you who have come to celebrate with this esteemed group of Parsons College students. When you leave today, there will be no doubt in your mind that Parsons and her faculty played an important role in the sending of successful, caring, knowledgeable, and helpful people out into the world. Thank you for attending, and thank you, Mr. Neff, and all of you who created this event for restoring the great history of Parsons and for making this day possible. Dr. Tree, thank you for your passion for teaching and for introducing hundreds and hundreds of students to the beauty and elegance of learning, reading, and understanding our past. You have had a greater impact than you could possibly know. Thank you, Dr. I came to Fairfield to attend Parsons College in 1960. And to refresh your memories, this was an era of a new, young President of the United States who beckoned, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." These were very moving words for teenagers. This was the era of the Peace Corps. Again, very appealing to young college kids. Regrettably, there was also the era of the 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion. This was also the era of the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, where I recall all of us huddled around the TV set, watching this crisis unfold, and convinced that our college degree was going to have to wait, while us guys would go off to fight those darn Russians. By 1963, our inspired U.S. president was dead. The balloon of enthusiasm, hope, and asking what we could do for our country was deflated. By August of 1964, President Johnson signed the Tonkin Bay Resolution, which sent many of our 60s era graduates to war in Vietnam. So that is what was going on in our world while at Parsons. Parsons gave me the tools, a great education, teaching credentials, and a new, inexplicable confidence. I want to just finish with a little anecdote about an experience in Russia, which I think speaks volumes about our perception of people and what's really happening. This was 1 week following the coup that toppled Gorbachev and brought Yeltsin to power. I was teaching at a huge auditorium, simultaneous translation. Across the street was the belly dome, translated White House, the Russian White House, belly dome. Tanks were still parked in strategic locations. The U.S. Embassy was in walking distance, giving a lot of comfort. At the conclusion of the first week, the students wanted to throw a party for their American professor. Russians are very good at parties. Each seat had 3 glasses in front of it: vodka, champagne, cognac. And Russians are very good at toasting. By the way, I found in Russia and in China and other parts of the world that when you get away from the bureaucracy, you find ordinary folks who want the same things you and I want. They want to, or they do enjoy good jokes. They want the best for their children. They like to dance and they like to sing. Education is a universal pursuit. So near the end of the first class, the students decided to have a big party. And near the conclusion of the party, one of the students stood up to the microphone and said, "Professor Reese, we have a present to give you as appreciation for the new knowledge that you've brought to us. Please accept these books, which are the poems of Pushkin, the famous Russian poet." I was moved by this and I said that I would, upon return to the United States, donate these books of poetry in the name of this class to the California University Library System, so that students from all over the world could enjoy the poetry of Pushkin. Well, every week it became a thing. Lots of toasting, followed by wonderful gifts. So the last week, what do you suppose they presented me? The complete writings of Karl Marx. So I went into my speech and I said, thank you very much. I'm going to donate these to the University of California Library System so students all over the world can read, notice not enjoy, can read the writings of Karl Marx, at which point there was a student that became very animated at the back of the room, and he was waving his hands, and he said, Professor Reese, Professor Reese. I said, yes? He said, for God's sakes, tell him we tried it, and it didn't work.
Stephen Smith, class of 67, attorney and youth advocate. With Paul Smith, brother of Steve, please come forward as the presenter.
Good morning. I asked Steve to prepare something since he's not going to be able to make it today. And first off, he kind of listed some of his accomplishments since graduating from Parsons. Says he graduated from Parsons with a BA in sociology. While he was at Parsons, he was a member of the Lambda Chi Alpha serving as its president. He served in several different positions of student government, including the vice president of his graduation class. After graduation, he worked in Philadelphia as a college recruiter for a satellite college in Parsons. After that, he served as an infantry platoon leader in Vietnam at the age of 24 and was awarded several military commendations, including 2 Bronze Stars, and he attained the rank of First Lieutenant. After Vietnam, Steve attended graduate school under the GI Bill, receiving an MA, MBA, and JD. And after that, he worked in college administration for several years, including serving as president of Camarillo Pacific University in San Diego. He was past president of the San Diego Career Guidance Association. After that, he founded a general law practice in Anderson, Indiana, where he still works today. Steve has served as a part-time juvenile defender for over 32 years, representing juvenile clients charged with everything from murder to truancy. In 2005, the Indiana Public Defender Council awarded him the Gold Award as the state's top juvenile defender. He has served as a member of the Child Protection Team in Anderson, Indiana for many years. He served the community as president of the Community Center for several years. He served as a board member and youth leader of the First United Methodist Church, both in San Diego, California, and Anderson, Indiana. And he has represented neglected and abused children for years. He is married to his wife, Judy, for over 40 years. He has 2 grandchildren, 2 children and 2 grandchildren. He is the son of Harriet and Kenny Smith, longtime residents of Fairfield. Steve and I both grew up in Fairfield, and his sisters include Kate Martin Smith of Parker, Colorado, Ann Kirkham Smith of Larchmont, New York, Cindy Knudsen Smith of Deerfield, Illinois, and myself, and I live in Minneapolis. I'm just proud to be able to come and accept this for Steve. He wrote just a brief letter, said that I would like to thank you and Parsons College Foundation for the honor of being inducted to the Wall of Honor. Thank you for your kind remarks. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend as I have a previous commitment. I will be in Minneapolis this weekend with some of the men I trained with when I was in Officer Candidate School for Banding in 1968. My brother, Paul Smith, will be there representing me. Congratulations to the other alumni being inducted. I consider it an honor to be mentioned with them. I did know Gene Timmerman, and I was quite fond of him. He was one of my fraternity brothers. I remember Gene's participation in President Kennedy's 50-mile march by going from Fairfield to Achumla and back. I'm so sorry that he is no longer with us. He was one of the good guys. Thank you very much for this honor. Steve.
Robert Spencer, class of 57, coach and mentor. I was very honored when Bob asked me to do his presentation today. It was the summer of 1970. I had just completed my first year of teaching at Parsons College, and Dr. John Ward, chairman of the department and athletic director, called me to his office to share the good news that Parsons would be establishing a women's intercollegiate athletic program under the direction of Bob Spencer. Dr. Ward explained that a small private college located in Wahoo, Nebraska, John F. Kennedy College, had a women's athletic program, and the majority of the coaching staff and a number of athletes would be coming to Parsons in 2 weeks. Wow! More student athletes, and they'd be bringing all women? Wow! I thought that was pretty neat. Midwestern College, a Parsons satellite school, was located in Denison, Iowa. They closed 2 weeks into their school year, and that body of student athletes also joined the Parsons community. Bob Spencer graduated from Albia High School and came to Parsons College as a freshman, completing 2 years of school, and then took a tour of duty with the U.S. Army. When he returned to Parsons, he was chosen to be a driver for the new president, Dr. Miller G. Roberts. And I also find that our first honoree, Doug Billings, was a driver for Dr. Roberts. So there may be some stories over lunch that they can share. There was a whole raft of stories going on with that era, but we will save those for them to reminisce. Upon graduation in 1957, Bob began his teaching and coaching career at Carlisle High School, southeast of Des Moines. Bob was also interested in the study of birds and located a new species along the Des Moines River named a kyhawk. The first season brought great enthusiasm to the Fry Thomas Fieldhouse. It was beyond expectation. The women's basketball team, affectionately known as the Wild Kittens, would put on a pregame show to Sweet Georgia Brown and share a display of ball handling, juggling, and downright exceptional free throw shooting to standing room only crowds. It's all in the elbow, according to Walter Pashkin, professor of English, regarding the high percentage of free throws the Wild Kittens would complete. WMTV in Cedar Rapids was also enthralled with the concept that a special road trip to Cedar Rapids provided complete coverage to eastern Iowa for the Wild Kittens. During that time, I had the privilege of being sports information director and had a chance to provide statistics at halftime and at the end of the game by cutting a ditto sprint master and running copies for the coaches so they could make adjustments in their game plan at halftime. Bob's teams at Parsons were getting national exposure with their play as they traveled to towns such as Raytown, Missouri, and Plainview, Texas. Needless to say, these were long road trips for the team and coaches. Legend has it that a return trip from Texas found assistant coach Ray Ham at his usual spot behind the wheel of a 2,200-mile trip. And they were just hitting the outskirts of Batavia, and Coach Spencer woke up and said, "Hey Ray, why don't you pull over and I'll give you a break. I'll bring it home to Fairfield." So Coach Spencer, thank you for allowing that team to have that privilege. Ray worked for the admissions office, and part of his territory was the eastern United States. On his way east, he would always take Interstate 80 and pass Pittsburgh in order to get to Philadelphia, his home area of York, Pennsylvania, on recruiting trips. One of our other associates was 2010 inductee honor Stiff Biff Coomer. He was intramural director, and sorry he couldn't be with us today. He's on a foundation board in Milwaukee, so he sends his best to you, Bob. Had a chance to speak with him last year. Bob's graduate thesis at Northern Colorado University was a vision or a blueprint for intercollegiate women's athletics. At that time, there was no Division I athletic programs for women. Bob was really the godfather of women's athletics, and with this movement, Title IX was established. His basketball camps were famous in Iowa and around the Midwest. Talent shows during these camps by high school athletes provided a break from the pressures of dribbling drills and other activities on the court. While at John F. Kennedy College, Bob annually had a young lady who would win the talent show, showing her talents and growing them into a career. A lifelong performer, Reba McEntire, was one of his campers. Behind every successful man is a strong woman, and Pat Spencer fits that bill to a T. Bob and Pat have made a great team through basketball camps and long trips by station wagons and vans all over the Midwest and the West Coast when he was coach at Fresno State. Thank you, Pat, for providing Bob that rudder in life to lead to the success we shared today. In 2001, Bob received the Jocelyn Berenson's Service Award from the Women's Basketball Association, recognizing his lasting legacy to the sport. Bob accumulated over 660 wins over a 34-year career of basketball coaching. Please join me as we have a warm welcome to my friend of 41 years, Bob Spencer, for induction to the 2011 Wall of Honor. Bob Spencer.
I'm really honored and blessed to be among all of these recipients and those who appear on the wall. I would certainly like to thank and be remiss if I did not thank my wife and daughter Lisa, and I appreciate very much my relatives being here from our hometown of Albion. Also, I would again like to introduce to you two people who have already been introduced, one being Vera conflict. After 2 years at Parsons, before I went there, Vera asked me to help her with the women's basketball team. And she was responsible for me having an additional interest in doing what I could for women in athletics as a men's athletic director. And Dr. Ward and David Neff and Biff Coomer, who was mentioned earlier, were all instrumental in promoting what we brought to Parsons College and built upon over the years at 5 other institutions before anyone really cared about women in NCAA athletics. I would also like to recognize all of you and thank you so very much for being here today and sharing in what we all consider as a great institution still, Parsons College. My wife and I were here in Daughter when they happened to close. But as mentioned earlier, in our heart, none of us have forgotten the things that took place and the good memories we have of Parsons College in Fairfield, Iowa. I would also again like to have Ray Ham stand, because Ray helped me for 8 years, and he is now a big part of the community here, as many of you already know. Again, and in closing, I thank you for all of you helping to keep the memories of Parsons College alive. And the committee, thank you so much.
Robert Stiller, class of '67, Green Mountain Coffee Growers founder. Would John Braidwood please come to the podium as a presenter?
350 million cups of coffee a day. Let me repeat that. 350 million cups of coffee a day. That's what Americans drink every 24 hours. And if you can believe it, that's enough coffee to fill 1.2 million swimming pools across the country every 24 hours. Our next inductee enjoys a significant distinction in the production and sales of coffee in this country. But interestingly, Bob Stiller's entrepreneurial efforts went up in smoke. Marijuana smoke is. E.C. Wider, a manufacturer of extra-wide rolling paper, was so successful, it was subsequently sold for $6.2 million. Not bad for another wild and innovative Parsons grad, don't you agree? Then one day, at a Vermont ski resort, Bob had a cup of coffee that he liked so much, he bought the company. Hence the genesis of Green Mountain Coffee Roasters of Waterbury, Vermont. Good to the last crop, Bob insisted on roasting only Arabic coffee beans grown in higher mountain altitudes for what he thought was going to be the very best tasting coffees. Blends such as mocha nut fudge, wild mountain blueberry, rainforest nut, and my favorite, the daily grind, are just a few examples of over 50 Green Mountain coffee selections. Bob loves to think and act outside of the box. An example of one of his many
innovations is participation with the career coffee makers in the manufacture of the K-cup. Perhaps some of you have seen this very invention. This is the brewing of a single cup of coffee sold through grocery stores, and in addition, have been installed and featured in ExxonMobil convenience stations throughout the country. As a result, Green Mountain Coffee enjoys a whopping 70% of that market, which now accounts for 17% of their bottom line. What an innovation. Ideas such as this have contributed to, hold on to your seats, have contributed to having earned in excess of $100 million pre-tax dollars in 2010. But you know what really sets Bob apart from many of his competitors? It's his philanthropic and humanitarian efforts to financially help coffee growers and humanity throughout the world. He has divided 10% of his net profits and has given it to Conservation International and the Rainforest Alliance, both of which seek to ensure the protection of our Earth's ecosystems. In addition, 5% of tax profits go to socially responsible organizations such as Medicines for Humanity, which is dedicated to reducing child mortality in impoverished communities throughout the world. And feature this. Green Mountain Coffee was ranked #1 in the list of 100 best corporate citizens published in International Review magazine. And in 2001, Bob was named Entrepreneur of the Year in Forbes magazine. And if that's not enough, just last week, hang on to your seats, just last week, he was named one of the 400 wealthiest people in the United States. God, I love this man. Geez, Bob, I hope you haven't forgotten. Remember what great friends we were at school? Unfortunately for me and for Bob, well, not for Bob, but, well, perhaps for Bob as well. Unfortunately for me and for us, Bob is currently in Europe attending to a previous family commitment. But one thing we all know, Bob, that for all your amazing business successes, you couldn't have done it. You could not have done it without the benefit of a Parsons College education. Our profound and sincere congratulations. Welcome to the Parsons College Wall of Honor.
Gene Timmerman, 1963 to 65, Parsons sharpshooter, founder, member of United States Army Golden Knights parachute team. Jeff Mazer, please come forward to the podium at this time as a presenter.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow alumni, and honorees, and inductees. My name is Jeff Mazer, and it's good to be back in Fairfield. And from what I can see, Fairfield is a thriving city. I'd like to make a special thanks to Lee Gobble to say hello, an old friend. And when I drove into town last night, the sign said, now in the city limits of Fairfield, there was a little sign on the bottom that said, it's still Gobble's country. First, I want to thank the voting board for giving our friend Gene this befitting honor. Today, I have the honor to represent all of the Parsons alumni from the College Jump Club, the Sharpshooters. Today, I'm here to have a celebration of the life of an American hero. My friend and fellow Parsons student is Gene Timmerman, a local Fairfielder and a very successful entrepreneur. Gene has a beautiful wife, Marcia, and 2 children, Brent and Brittany. One of our club members, Dave Furling, a Parsons student, put together a short collage of pictures of Gene's life, which is running in the background, and we gave a handout so that you don't have to try to read all the writing. When I met Gene early in 1964, it was quite apparent that Gene was able to bridge the divide between the townies and the Parsons students. He was well respected by the locals. When Gene started the sharpshooters with a couple other students, the town folks used to come out to the airport to see who the nuts were that were jumping. Gene took our club to be one of the largest in the United States. At one point, he taught 5 girls that were Parsons students to jump, the largest amount of women in the United States. Jumping was, at that time, in the very early stages of sport parachuting. Gene, with his leadership ability, was able to make you feel safe and confident that if you made a jump, it was going to be okay. Club member Tony Stroh once said that he was making one of his first jumps and that he was up in the plane and was scared. Gene, with that famous smile on his face, looked back and said, "You are not scared, you are concerned." Gene grew up in Fairfield. His father, O.E. Sr., better known by the students that knew him as Big O. Gene kept him hopping. Gene was a rebel. But all of us that knew his dad treaded on thin ice. He was a farmer's farmer. His mother was always known as Mom to all the students. When the Timmermans moved into town, she used to make sure all the students living in the surrounding houses could always come over for a meal. Some of us were very lucky to go to Gene's farm for dinner, and such, she could whip up some real home cooking, and there was always homemade pie and ice cream. I cannot imagine living in a world without an American hero like Gene. When Gene played football for Fairfield High School, he was like the Larry Zonka of the Dolphins. When Gene had the ball, he was like a train plowing through the opposing team, hence the nickname he grew up with, Train. What makes Gene stand out among his peers was that he was determined to do great things. He had the drive that he was going to be successful. Underneath that large, rough frame was a gentle giant. He always stood up for the small guy. In the middle 60s, Gene had the call. It was time to volunteer for Vietnam. He served with one of the most famous combat units ever, the 101st Airborne Division. Gene rose to the rank of Staff Sergeant and was highly decorated. Unfortunately, little did Gene know, he brought home a dormant sleeper cell called Agent Orange, which finally took our friend. Husband and father at an age when he wasn't able to enjoy his hard work. He passed too early in life. When he came home, he was determined to be assigned to the United States Army Parachute Team, a select group of military men that went around the world as roving diplomats. This is a very elite group of men in the Army bringing goodwill on parachuting shows around the world. When Gene separated from the service, he was on a new challenge: go out to the real world and become a successful businessman. From which, reading a bio on him, he never said, "I can't do it." He was a very private person, but he always listened and then learned. Gene worked for a food company and was instrumental by himself bringing in the Army Air Force Food Exchange accounts and went ahead and also procured the National Pizza Hut account to his company. This was so big that Rich Foods had to build another plant to handle all of the new business. Because of his outstanding aggressive business savvy, Gene had attained the position as National Chain Sales Account Manager. This is why I believe Gene deserves this award. He is what I think Parsons was all about: leaving and to be able to adapt to any and all challenges and obstacles that were there. Marcia, Brett, Brittany, I am proud and humbled to give you this honor on behalf of the voting board and all the rest of us. With this honor today, which makes Gene stand out among his peers one more time. To our friend and leader, Gene Timmerman, this honor is for you. Accepting the award today for Gene is his wife, Marcia, his son, Britt, and his daughter, Brittany. I'm sorry. If they would please come up. Thank you.
for being here, and particularly the committee at Parsons who has put this wonderful celebration together and has chosen to honor my husband, Gene. It's very humbling and quite an emotional thing for our family. We obviously wish he were here to accept it, but in reality he is. He will always live in our hearts and does today. I think one of the things that this weekend has done for us, he's been gone from us for 11 years, September 29th, but it feels like he's here alive again this weekend. We have family here, we have friends here, we have former parachutists here, and the stories now are flowing, which is wonderful for Gene's children to hear and to create those memories, some of the things that they had not heard. Some they're not going to tell us, I understand, but it's good that they are hearing some of the wonderful things. And I believe, I've always known Gene to have an avid love for football, for parachuting, but this weekend I've grown to realize that his true strength was uniting people. We have people on Skype over here that wanted to hear the celebration. There are some of the same men that flew in for his funeral 11 years ago. They came from all over. When his disease was known, it became viral and it just went all over the world. And there were Golden Knights that flew in, and it's the same this weekend. We have the sharpshooters here and on Skype, and the Golden Knights that were with him are also have the ability to listen today. So, as Jeff said, or as we talked about earlier, he seemed to unite people. When all of them came in for his funeral 11 years ago, they all reconnected, and now that group of men has grown to about 30 of them, and they're constantly on the internet with one another. So it was Gene that brought them all back together, and we're very happy about that. Jeff, I'd like to thank you for all the work that you put into this, making the biography that was handed out and getting the Skype situation worked out where people could hear. Dave Furling is on Skype listening. He is the one that was instrumental in putting everything together and submitting it to Parsons, and he worked endlessly doing that. But there are several listening, and thank you for all being there to see this today. Thank you.
Coming to our wrap-up on this, we've asked Dr. Tree to offer his congratulations to the class. We have two special pieces for you before we dismiss. So Dr. Robert L. Tree, former Dean of the College.
Thank you very much. Good to be here, good to see all of you. Dave mentioned in his remarks earlier this morning a rather famous alum of Parsons, and this is Susan Fulton Welty, a native of Fairfield and a graduate of the college back in the mid-1920s. In a book that she wrote and published in the 1960s, she referred to, in her very next to last chapter, she referred to Parsons College as the Cinderella School. And I've often wondered what she really meant by that. And I can't ask her, at least yet a while. But I have concluded that what she meant was that Cinderella went to the ball after all, and the prince came seeking her following the ball. There, we don't know what happened afterwards, but we assumed that there was marriage and children. And I think after having listened for the last 3 years now to the accomplishments of many of the graduates of this school, that the sons and daughters of Parsons College could hold their own with the sons and daughters of any other institution in this country or abroad. don't think it really matters very much when you come right down to it if you have the right stuff. Whether you went to a famous university in a major city, or whether you went to a little-known college in a little-known village, and we don't have villages in Iowa, we have cities. A little-known city in Iowa. It is what you have to bring to the school, what you get from it, and take away. And so I think the honorees of the last 3 years are very representative of Parsons College, but there are also many of your fellow alums who have not gotten the honor, who have also done very well, have made themselves welcome in communities all over the country. Mrs. Walter recalls in her book that most of the graduates of the school stayed in southern Iowa. Well, we know, and you know, that the graduates of this college are all over the world. And I'll just give you one example. A few years ago, the mayor of Phoenix, Arizona, was a graduate of Parsons College. I met him just briefly one time when he was on the campus. Please don't ask me later what his name was, because I've gotten to that stage in life where names slip in and out, and I may think of it in the middle of the night. But at any rate, the point is that you are everywhere, and you have made your mark in your communities, your state, and country. And so I think all graduates of the college are to be congratulated for what they have done and accomplished. Well done. Thank you.
As many of you remember, especially those in the 50s, you had required chapel. And I don't know if you could graduate unless you attended. As we got into the 60s, I think my track record was, as a freshman, I missed one. And when I was a senior, I made one chapel service. So whether that was the trend or not, but as part of our outreach to preserve and maintain the memory, the Barhide organ has been a major part of the chapel for graduations, honor services held in the facility and on campus. Prior to the raising of the chapel on campus, a gentleman by the name of Mr. John Conant completely disassembled the Barhide organ, had it stored in various places around Fairfield for 8 years, and has committed to volunteering over 2,000 hours without pay. John, would you like to stand, please, and be recognized? 3 years ago, John began reassembling the organ in this facility here at the Sondheim Center for Performing Arts. 1 year ago, the second-class induction, had the privilege of meeting Mr. Conant, as you hear today, and hear the clear tones of the organ performed by Fairfield's own Werner Elmker. This year, we have a similar opportunity, and we greatly appreciate what John has done. Werner, if you'd like to come forward, I don't know if we can get lights, house lights up so people can see the ranks of the organ pipes on either side. Werner and I will take a moment and we'll bring the organ out and have a short presentation on the organ for you. The other major item from Barhyte Chapel is the angel stained glass windows. I think you may have received a handout coming through. Move through this very quickly and then get to the actual unveiling in Alumni Hall. This coming October 18th would be the 100th anniversary of the dedication of Barhyte Chapel on the Parsons campus. The chapel is a Gothic-style structure with stained glass windows, including rippled glass made by Elsie Tiffany, and was given to Parsons College by Theodore W. Barhyte. The chapel is the centerpiece of the campus with a cloistered walkway to Parsons Hall, which was used as the president's office. Barhyte Chapel was the spiritual and ceremonial heart of Parsons, hosting countless services, concerts, plays, pep meetings, and weddings. In 2001, when demolition was imminent, the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center Board coordinated and salvaged the original stained glass window, pipe organ that you have just heard and met Mr. Conant, pews, which you will see in the lobby, light fixtures, which are on the floor in our Alumni Hall, limestone and limestone plaques. Working with these significant elements, the architect and board created a Parsons College Alumni Hall Museum that you will see when we unveil. This is to preserve this most important part of Fairfield's history. Last year, completed 10 years of restoration and installation of the pipe organ in our Sondheim Theater. It's now time to pursue preservation of the historic 100-year-old Barhyte window. Boulevard Studios in Fairfield has kept this treasure in storage for us and will be restoring it this year. The 168-inch by 150-inch stained glass piece will be totally re-leaded, proper steel reinforcing system created, and a new frame fabricated and installed inside the building, guaranteeing Parsons College Hall, center stage, and Fairfield Arts and Convention Center. There are 4, Susan Kessel was supposed to say this word, clerestory windows in the Parsons Hall area that will also be filled with original Barhyte Chapel stained glass. These are phase 2 in our restoration project and will enhance the preservation of Parsons memorabilia. You have the flyers in your hand which describe the costs that we're faced with. Please, we have secured $26,000 from Windows for the Soul, $9,000 from the Greater Jefferson County Foundation, and preliminary pledges of $4,000. We're looking at approximately $36,000 to complete phase 1. Windows promise to be a crowning finish, and as many of you participate in saving these magnificent treasures. So this is from Susan Kessel, Fairfield Art Association. At this time, I would also like, as we mentioned, John Conant, he, besides the 2,000 plus hours, he's put over $8,000 of his own money into this project, and so we're very thankful and we're in support and working to help replenish his funds on there. On the back of your program, if you would please look, and 7th inning stretch, we're running a little past time, so we're going to move forward on this. If you would please stand and look to the last page of your program for the words to the Parsons College alma mater. If you would join me, please, in standing. These were written by Susan Fulton Welding, class of 26, Wall of Honor inductee in 2010. So, Kevin or Sam, if you would please start the music for the alma mater.